The show's going to be a little different this season.
We are referring to this as Game of the Game. Well, the game is that there's a hat. In that hat, there are prompts. We do not know what these prompts say.
You and we both don't know what we're going to be talking about next episode. Cookie Pocket, the game of the game.
The game of the game of the game of the game of the game.
The game of the game.
To interrupt our discussion about other things,
No,
which I know is the
No.
point of the episode, I think we
That's right.
should give some lip service to the movie we're talking about this time, The Girl in the Yellow
no,
Jumper.
no,
Just
no,
for a little
no,
while
no,
before
no.
we can talk about Andor and Arc Raiders or whatever this game is.
No.
Not Arc Raiders.
No. Dak, this is my episode. It's going to be off the rails at least 70% of the time.
Okay, all
So
right.
today, though, I will give Zach some credit. He does have a point. We should talk about the movie. The Girl in the Yellow Jumper. 2020 film by, I believe it's Lukman Ali, who is Ugandan. In fact, as a matter of fact, the prompt that I pulled was a Ugandan film, and that is what I chose. Now, availability of Ugandan films, I will be the first one with the pitchfork and the torch and the picket signs outside for all of the Ugandans that have not been represented properly
Okay.
in
All right.
subscription services. Because that is a sin. It took me way too long to figure out where all the Ugandan films were that were not that one that everyone always talks about.
Mhm.
Regardless, The Girl in the Yellow Jumper. I think it makes sense to have Christian be on the chopping block today and explain to us
Oh yeah.
what
I'm
the
ready.
film is about. I think that would be great.
I'm ready. So there's this. I'm going to start with a policeman. For some reason, that feels right to me. But there's a policeman driving in a car with a suspect in the backseat who's handcuffed for precautionary reasons, even though I think he describes him as a witness and not a suspect,
Mhm.
even though he's handcuffed. And he comes across this man wearing a yellow hoodie. By the way, not a jumper, a hoodie, but who cares? He's wearing a yellow hoodie, and he's got a bag, like a duffel, not big
A
enough to
gym
be a duffel
bag.
bag.
It's a
but-
gym bag, I think.
Yeah, okay, sure, a gym
Yeah.
bag.
With like a Playboy logo on it. Continue.
Yes, or something like that. And he asks for a ride into town because he's stranded. And this police officer, being very well trained and knowledgeable of dangers, tells him to lift up his shirt so that he can, and do a 180 so that he can see if he's hiding weapons. But he does not sufficiently search the bag, which will matter later. Eventually, the man is allowed into the car, and they drive for quite a bit of time, most of the film, and they talk about different philosophical and cultural things. The man in the yellow jumper makes fun of the policeman for not knowing certain pop cultures and whatnot. The man in the back is pretty much silent the whole time, except for when he gets violently car sick and they have to pull over. And at some point, we get non-chronological cuts back to what the man in the yellow hoodie was doing before being led into this car, which is he was being tortured by these women, and eventually he gets the upper hand on them and grabs a shotgun, and we think he kills one of them, and he shoots a car. And then the other woman in that car drives away. And there's also a couple really strange cutaways to a man in front of not a whiteboard or a bulletin board, but one of those like easels, except I'm pretty sure it's a digital thing.
Oh, yes.
Where he explains how painful being shot in the kneecap is. It's as though you're watching like an educational YouTube short in the middle of
An
the movie.
American guy. It sounds like.
Gosh. Eventually, the policeman eventually the man in the yellow hoodie admits to having killed the woman, though he proclaims it was in self-defense. And the police officer says, okay, well, I have to take you in because you just admitted to killing someone. But first they drive to the police officer's house. And by the way, this whole time, the man in the yellow hoodie still not cuffed or anything. The police officer gets out of the car and starts walking into the house. And the yellow hoodie man says, oh, by the way, can I use your bathroom? And the police officer's like, yeah, sure, whatever. Oh, by the way, grab the fish. And they make their way in, and Stunner, the surviving woman, is the sister of the police officer's girlfriend, who was the other woman. And she recognizes the man in the yellow hoodie. And she is about as alarmed as I am when I notice the time. And
she is, I would say she might be the worst actor in the movie. This is not a great cohort of performers, but she, I think, is holding the least weight.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Well, having a pretty strong onus like on her in this moment.
Yeah.
This is the part of the movie where it becomes, it sort of transitions from Tarantino pastiche to Rashomon pastiche. Because then at some point we're given this alternate perspective from this surviving woman that really this guy was a pedophile or a rapist or both. I'm forgetting exactly, but he tries to compel a woman to have an abortion after assaulting her. And like her version of events is no, he was the bad guy. But we're just kind of told this. We're given a couple like shots of it, but not to the same extent as his perspective. And eventually they're all four driving together. The police officer and his girlfriend's sister and the man in the yellow hoodie and the witness / suspect is back in the back of the car again. At one point, the officer's like, oh, I forgot you were here. I did too. And as the woman's telling her version of events, I forget if she mentions the bag, and then the police officer says, oh, wait, I had a bag like that, and I lent it to my girlfriend.
It's,
and
he says, where did you get a gun? And she's like, oh, well, we used yours. And then that sparks his memory.
Right. This guy is not a good police officer. And the man in the yellow hoodie in the back seat, as soon as the police officer has this realization, pulls a shotgun out of the bag and blows the police officer to high heaven, and his girlfriend's sister is also killed. I just watched this and I'm forgetting how the other man gets the upper hand on the man in the yellow hoodie, which is rather embarrassing.
I think he's dead by the time we next see them. I think the idea is because the police officer reaches for the glove box where we know his like, I don't know, guns. It looks like a Beretta to me, but it probably isn't a Beretta.
It's a Makarov. It's a Soviet.
There we go.
It's a Makarov.
It's a little gun. It's a little handgun. And he reaches for it as the man in the yellow hoodie is pulling out the shotgun. And I think the implication is that they shot each other.
Okay.
Because the old man, the witness, doesn't like do anything to actually kill anybody. Well, in that car.
Until. But the next car.
Now we're just, another person pulls up. The witness man murks that man. Yep. And, wait, he drops a cigarette butt. It's about the cigarette butt killer that they mentioned at the beginning. It's all coming together. And he unzips the fanny pack and puts the rest of the cigarette in the fanny pack. Another thing the police officer should have searched if he was even remotely competent. And he takes that other man's van and drives away. And there is a post-credit scene. I don't know if you guys stuck around.
Oh no, I missed the post-credit scene. What happens in that? What do they tease? Do they tease the girl in the blue jumper?
Bring it home, Christian. Bring it home.
The Hulk
There's just
will
a few
appear
kids,
in...
like
in Doomsday.
It's just like kids playing a version of jump rope or something, and then the man in the cigarette butt killer just walks up, and then it's over.
So I have a question / comment. There's a voicemail that the cop gets from, I'm assuming, another investigator.
Yeah, like a superior or something, I guess.
Yeah. And he talks, it's hard to like understand exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But he shows a like Patrick somebody nameplate. And I was wondering who Patrick was. So I looked at the actor, and the actor, maybe I'm being prejudiced, looks like the kid that is in the after credit scene. So maybe there's a connection I just missed or something.
Walk me through the after credit scene again.
So he literally just walks up.
The
old man walks up to a group of, I think it's 4 kids total. 3 of them are playing like jump rope with like 2 jump ropes or something.
Are they playing the game they talk about in the one cutaway?
What?
Because the first cutaway is like, he talks about the guy talks about like, it's a game that was once popular in schoolyards where you wrap jump ropes around 2 people and then somebody has to jump in them and then it gets higher and higher. Are they playing that game?
Yep, that's what it was. Yep,
okay, so they're set up and called back for something.
There's continuity.
Yeah,
and then I'm pretty sure that kid, he's like, I think he's speaking a different language and there's no subtitles. I'm not 100% on that.
That happens at the gas station too.
It also happens when
but then there are subtitles for like the very last thing that guy says. Where he said they're talking, and then the gas station attendant says it's free, and then the police officer goes, "Aha!" and then
But anyway, that he like is going up. The other kid that's not playing is sitting down, and he has earbuds in, and he's asking him some question, and the kid is like, "Yes" or something, and then the old man like makes a face, and that's it. That's the whole.
And he's got another cigarette, so I think the implication is he's about to kill them and then drop the cigarette butt. But yeah.
So maybe Patrick's like a son or some other character that was mentioned in passing.
Well,
I completely missed that.
The sound mix is really muddy throughout a lot of this, especially that end portion, because you have the not great sound recording, the not great sound mixing, and the fact that there's been this like effect applied to the voice to make it sound like it's coming through a phone. But I think that voicemail essentially says, this guy you're taking in as a witness maybe it's his instructions to collect this guy as a witness. It's like, this guy was
he sends a picture of the witness to try to ID him before he gets that voicemail in response.
Yeah, and the voicemail says something like, this guy was accused of being a witch or a witch doctor by the people in his village, and then they burned down his house with his wife and child inside, and isn't it weird that he would be a witness to this cigarette butt thing? That's so strange. And it's revealed that the detective's like lucky charm that he has tied to his rearview mirror is actually a locket with a picture, or with pictures of the old man and his wife inside. How the detective didn't realize it was a locket, I don't know. Or if he did, how he thought it was appropriate to take this family heirloom from the site of dual manslaughter charitably from the burning of this house and not give it to the survivor is maybe even worse. But yeah, look, I'm not going to say this all comes together perfectly, but I will say that I liked this movie, and I found myself enjoying myself watching it. And no, of course, this doesn't measure up to a lot of the other stuff we've talked about on this show. This doesn't measure up to its aspirations and influences really at all. As I said in my Letterboxd review, Luqman Ali aims for the moon, and he lands kind of somewhere in the sky. Maybe not amongst the stars, but he's up there kind of somewhere. Throughout, my main point of comparison for this was not Hollywood films that have a bunch of money, or even if they don't have a bunch of money and resources, they have access to just things we have access to in the United States that the Ugandan film industry, independent or otherwise, is not going to have access to. And so my point of comparison was not that kind of movie, not professionally released productions from the Western world, the United States, but more student films. Because this to me has the feel of a student film where they're kind of figuring out how to do this as they're making it. And on that kind of matrix, on that rubric, I found myself enjoying it quite a bit and being impressed by a decent amount of it for their resources and for what they were going for. The cinematography in this is really clean and nice through a lot of it. It's got some style. It certainly looks a lot better than Sylvia, the previous African movie that we talked about on this show. Sylvia was not a good-looking movie.
No.
And Christian is ho-humming right now, but I think we need to play the tape
I'm
for
nodding
Christian.
back and forth. I'm equivocating.
I think we need to play the tape for Christian because Christian was not kind to Sylvia when we reviewed that film. And I think this movie looks and is directed much, much, much better than Sylvia was. They've got some really neat camera moves in here. Some of the editing, I think, is really funny and fun. You can see through it a little more than you can in, say, a Tarantino movie, but I see what they were going for, and a lot of it did work for me. This, to me, had the feel of something I would see at, like, a film school student showcase and go, you know what? I had a lot of fun with that, and that was pretty entertaining. And there were moments in this where I found myself going, whoa, which is often my response to something I enjoy in a movie. The bit at the end where the detective realizes, and there's the little ding sound as the man in the yellow jumper takes out the shotgun. I thought, this is really neat. If I made this movie, I would be pretty proud of myself for pulling that moment off in the edit. I will also admit, I put this prompt in the hat. And I put this prompt in the hat thinking it was almost a guarantee that if it was pulled, we would end up watching Who Killed Captain Alex, which is an iconic Ugandan film. It's one of the few that you can very easily find online. And that is a great movie. But I'm glad we watched this instead, because I think this is kind of like a hidden gem of sorts, considering its background and considering where it's from and when it was made. I was really nicely surprised by this in a way that I wouldn't have been for something like Who Killed Captain Alex, because I know what to expect. I only gave this a 3 out of 5, but I thought it was fun, and I'm glad I watched it.
All the performances in general are very mid. And the conversations, it may be because of their delivery of the English language, or it may be because they're not good at acting, or both. But every conversation that felt like it was supposed to be naturalistic and like believable came across as very boring to me. And that was my biggest strike against the film. Mm-hmm. Everything else, I really enjoyed the style. I enjoyed the spontaneity because it broke up the boring, not as well acted conversations. Now, from a story standpoint, is it cohesive and does it make sense? A lot of the time it didn't, which I guess borrows a lot from Tarantino, but at the very least, obviously Tarantino has a career-long way to kind of tie the style in with the rest of the story and still, have the performances be up to snuff and effectively deliver that style to a point where it flows really well. And in this, it just, obviously it's an amateur director. I mean, but at the same time, like, he clearly has an understanding of the craft. He clearly has a commitment to it, and he clearly understands like what a good shot looks like. Mm-hmm. And I can definitely tell like the budget was a severe limiting factor. So all those things I accounted for, but at the same time, the story doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of plot holes. There's a lot of basic things that budget definitely didn't limit at all. Mm-hmm. And it would have benefited for him to keep a lot of those stylistic things that he clearly really wanted to put in and really is passionate about on a more like grounded, not as crazy story, or at least make something that's more like simplistic and linear, or I guess more linear and still simplistic, but also linear. Because in this, I felt like the story was generally easy to understand and fairly simple. But because of all of the different, cutaways, essentially, it felt as a whole very jagged, and that was definitely really bothersome.
I want to speak in support
But
of the story for a moment,
okay,
because
all right, Zach
I
gets his
do think
turn.
the story makes sense. It's just not terribly well executed. I think there's while everything does line up and make sense in the way we're told it, I think there's maybe like one wrinkle too many to this plot line. Um, like I question the necessity of the cigarette butt killer aspect of the story, because I
Yeah,
think we're meant to think throughout that the girl in the yellow jumper and her cohort are the cigarette butt killers. But we kind of see too much of them and hear them talking too much for us to really believe that. And we also are given this motivation that, limp though it may be, we're told that their motivation to go after this guy is that he made like a quote unquote sacrilegious cartoon for a newspaper. And so we're kind of given too much and too little at the same time of these girls to think that they are actually the killer. So at the end, it kind of doesn't feel like, oh, what a twist. The old man was the killer the whole time. It kind of feels like, oh, okay, I guess the old man was the killer because it had to be somebody and it wasn't the girls. Um,
yeah,
so they could have played that differently. I think they should have just either A, play the girls a little more vague, so we have a feeling they could actually be these killers, because we hear on the television about a serial killer, and these girls do not come across as, they come across as girls who specifically want to kill this one guy, not as serial killers. Or just do away with the serial killing thing altogether. Because I think the interplay of like cop picks up guy on side of the road, guy on the side of the road talks about this crazy thing that happened to him while he's taking him to the police station. Cop actually diverts to take him home. That's kind of weird. Oh shoot, this cop is actually related to the girl that I killed. I've got to get out of here. I think all that is a very neat kind of twisty turny thing. Like I said, I think it has a good premise for like a low budget crime thriller, but it's got a few too many wrinkles in there that, while they do make sense, I think they kind of spoil the broth a bit.
Well, I was raging a bit in the group chat. I will disclose.
It's true.
And Zach said, save it for the tape. So I will relay what I typed here. I said, if this was an American film and we hadn't just watched Fateful Findings, we'd all have given it a 1. The gloves are gone. I threw them away. I really did not like this and did not find a lot redemptive about it. I landed on a 1.5, but this was a really not difficult, but just unrewarding watch for me. I agree that it, at least in terms of color and I guess cinematography, I guess it clears Sylvia in that respect, and a lot of the natural Ugandan settings are quite beautiful, wherever they're driving outside. But I just found pretty much everything else about this forgettable or frustrating. There's not a lot of momentum in the script. These guys are kind of just like sitting in the car most of the movie. The cutaways took me out of the movie so much. None of the actors thrilled me. Zach already mentioned the sound mix was kind of muddy, which is something we never talk about. But I think talking about this film's shortcomings is useful or interesting in that it sort of informs us what we take for granted in a film that has like obvious production value and resources, because we never talk about sound mix really on the podcast. But really, I found myself laughing quite a bit at moments that I don't think were meant to be funny, like when the man gets the upper hand on his on the woman and shoots her. Though for some reason the way that's cut was absolutely hilarious to me. And by the end I was laughing too.
Ladies, watch out for this man.
not funny for that reason. No, it's I don't know, man. I was just frustrated and distracted and grumpy. And maybe this is not qualitatively worse. We've talked about a lot of bad movies on
We
the
have.
Game of the Game. And
Yeah.
maybe it's just an accumulation of things, and maybe I'm being harsher on the girl in the yellow jumper because I've had no cooldown time. With Fateful Findings, I had like over a week. With Aggro Drift, I think I only had a day.
Uh-huh.
But there have been a lot of Christian dislike moments on this season. And this one has definitely come closest to our time of recording. So I will at least give it that bulwark.
I think this is a higher quality production than Fateful Findings. Absolutely.
Oh, sure.
There's more craft put into this than there was into Fateful Findings.
Yeah.
I think that, frustrating though it may be for Christian to hear me say this, I do think Aggro Drift is coming from a place of
better than Phantom Menace.
Certainly having greater access to resources than Girl in the Yellow Jumper. That's a movie that's the product of more money than The Girl in the Yellow Jumper. And I do think that shows, even if it's not necessarily a movie that looks good or looks expensive, it does look like a movie that costs something and is not that scrappy. The thing
Hold on, Zach. How much are red cameras?
Oh, red depends which one. Like a Komodo?
Give me a range.
Oh, jeez.
This was made with red cameras.
Oh, Girl in the Yellow Jumper.
In the Yellow Jumper.
Yeah.
Well, let's get a quote, because I rent cameras. I don't buy them.
Exactly.
So
You're on the clock.
But my point is,
Oh my
I don't
God.
think that there's a camera. I could be wrong. Like I said in my Letterboxd review, color me ignorant, because I could be incorrect here. I could be making all the wrong assumptions about Uganda. But I feel like I don't know. I don't know if in Uganda you can find like a cinema equipment rental house in every city to get
Man,
like a red camera.
$1,000, Zach.
Like
It's like $1,000.
okay, so if a Komodo ranges from about $3,000 to $7,000 to purchase.
Yeah.
And that's just the camera. That's not any of the accessories or lenses or monitors or anything like that. Certainly less money than Aggro Drift, which had a budget of at least a couple million. Even if that's just on the back end and like production companies and like people making money on festivals or whatever. But my point is that what I'm going for here is that even though Girl in the Yellow Jumper falls somewhere in the middle of the quality ranking in terms of the bad movies that we've watched this season, Girl in the Yellow Jumper feels so much more earnest and deliberate, and it feels like the product of somebody who really cared and wanted to entertain you. And I think, I don't know, maybe it's just the sentimental side of myself who has made bad movies before from an earnest place. But I place some value in that. I place some value in the enthusiasm and inspiration of the people who made it. Now, Neil Breen is a very earnest man as well, but I don't think Neil Breen makes movies to do anything other than like pump himself up and kind of espouse his own perspective. I think Luqman Ali genuinely wants to entertain you and wants you to have fun with this movie. And maybe more of that comes across on the screen for me because I've made things of this budget or much, much less before that have been way worse. But like, I found that really endearing and I enjoyed that.
Zach could afford Chick-fil-A sandwiches for the actors.
No, I couldn't,
Wikipedia
because
page.
I only
No, he
purchased one
couldn't.
for myself. Everybody else paid for their own.
Let me
He
clarify.
could afford to let us sit in the back seat.
Zach can afford. Zach can afford.
That's true. I could have afforded, but it just didn't occur to me that was the done thing at the time.
Well, Luqman Ali knew this before Zach did, and he did not pay his actors in food. Apparently, according to the Wikipedia page.
Yeah,
they were starving on set and had to come back after many months with different facial hair and body structure, which is insane. But yeah, I mean, that just lends a lot of more credibility to him, and especially, I mean, let's be honest, like the Ugandan film. Okay, let me look at Wikipedia. There's like 20 something choices. Like anything that's remotely broken the market enough for it to be seen by a Wikipedia editor to be put on Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
So like you're talking about like a market that's basically non-existent, and somebody that fought the COVID lockdown, and was not able to put this in Ugandan cinemas, but was able to get this on Netflix.
Yeah.
Crazy. That is crazy.
Apparently the first movie from Uganda ever to be put on Netflix. I don't think it's on Netflix anymore, but that's still an achievement. I mean, go look, man.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
For sure.
I did a bit of reading on his Wikipedia, and I was really pleased to see that apparently this movie kind of acted as like his breakthrough in the African like film circuit, because based on the merit of this, he got hired to make a movie in Nigeria, which won like best director at like the African equivalent of the Academy Awards, and he like made like a mini series too. So I don't know. I'm maybe some part of it is that I see a bit of my own struggling artist in him, but I'm rooting for Lukman Ali. Watch this name.
I did have this thought that maybe Zach is a true man of the people and I am not, especially while reading his review. But I will also say that I think, I mean, this is apples and oranges. It's so hard to talk about the quality of a movie without getting into the perversity of the star rating. And I will say, the more we watch stuff on the podcast, the more fruitless it feels to put a number on things. I'm much more on Zach's page about that stuff than I was seasons ago. That said, I also recognize the practical usefulness of being able to say a number. Like every time I watch a movie and my parents are curious what I think, they tend not to ask me what I think and instead to ask me what number I gave it.
Yeah.
Which I've grown to dread a bit, honestly. But I still think this film, and this is apples and oranges still, but like I think The Search for Alexander absolutely clears The Girl in the Yellow Jumper, and I don't think it's for
That's very kind of you.
I was gonna say the same thing, in all honesty. I think it's just because really, well, maybe Zach is just good because of the resources around him. He's not creative at all. Zach is incredibly creative. I'm not even gonna let that one slide.
Well, thank you.
Zach is incredibly creative and has like paramount exposure to all sorts of films from the deep, dark breadths of Earth, and way more than any of his graduates. Guaranteed.
Zach,
and that comes across in all of his work.
Well, thank you guys. But I will say here at my Academy acceptance speech that I think an additional thing that I think this comes across in Girl in the Yellow Jumper as well. I think Girl in the Yellow Jumper is good, like I've said, or good in the ways that it is good, even if we disagree on the quality of the movie. I think it's good because of the people who were involved making it and the creativity and the determination that they had. And I think that also holds true for the short films and stuff that I have made. Those are good not because I had a lot of money to work with, but because the people who were on the project working for free were determined and had good ideas and were creative. And that's ultimately what makes, I think, a good low budget film, or really a good film in general, is ingenuity and creativity and the people. Ultimately, you can throw as much money as you want at something, and if those values aren't there, you're going to end up with a $200 million turd on the wall. But you know, a movie made for basically nothing can have some kind of compelling quality if there's creativity and ingenuity and care to it. And so those are the values I think that make Girl in the Yellow Jumper for me. It's not a movie I would like recommend to somebody who isn't into movies. I think that the fun of this movie comes from seeing, oh wow, they pulled off that crazy camera turn. I wonder how they did that. They definitely didn't have like a crane or like a crazy crane or a rig to do that. How did they do that? Oh, that's a neat lighting effect they've gotten there. I wonder how they're filming this stuff in the cars as they drive along the road. Are they just driving the car, or is the car being pulled by a trailer? It puts you in the filmmaker's shoes, and puts you in that same situation of thinking, how would I do this? And so I think for people who make movies, this is a good watch. Am I going to recommend this to Nana? Am I going to recommend this to my parents? Am I going to recommend this to like my friends who know that I like movies but really don't care about them at all? Probably not. But I think if you care about movies and are interested in how they're made, this is a fun watch.
If you care about Africa.
Sure, that too. I don't know that this necessarily touches on the most pressing current issues in the African subcultures. But who knows? Maybe the tying the fish to the grill has like some real commentary to it that we're just not grasping.
That was a pretty good idea.
It does weirdly harp on this is a true story. There's
That's
even
true.
like halfway through the movie, there's just a frame where it's like, but remember, this is all true.
I think
As
he's
things
doing
are
a
happening.
Fargo. I don't think it is
Yeah.
true.
It's not real. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I think part of my frustration may be born from to turn the joke into a serious thing. The fact that this doesn't necessarily reckon with like Ugandan culture or society in a deep way. It's very much like a action thriller suspense Tarantino pastiche thing, which to me, if the film was of identical quality but dealt with something innately Ugandan that I was not or less acquainted with, I think I would find that a lot more interesting than its earnest and perhaps in certain ways praiseworthy attempt of emulating those more American things that I've already experienced, if that makes sense.
But I think that touches on, I wish I could think of an example of this, but I think that touches on something that's often a subject of controversy as well, where you hear from filmmakers in maybe less talked about subcultures or at-risk subcultures, filmmakers who are gay or from, war-torn nations or just nations of poverty. And you hear sometimes them saying like, well, why do I have to make a meaningful movie? Why do I have to make a movie that's about my struggle? Yeah. I just want to make a fun movie that other people that I know will like enjoy watching. And it I don't know. I feel like it's a subject of controversy. I feel that often filmmakers from these cultures are kind of told like, well, if you were telling a story, a meaningful story about this culture, then maybe, it would be worth watching. But and I can see that being frustrating for a filmmaker who's like, there have been enough movies about that. I don't want to make that. I want to make Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Here, I put my DVD in the first scene of the movie so you could tell I wanted to make it.
I was gonna mention that was
I think Fargo is in that stack.
It
too.
is. So is X-Men.
The opening credits are great. The opening credits are honestly pretty engaging. I thought the way that the extreme like focus on each object and like
I like the CRT
slope.
TV.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder if that's just the TV they have or that was intentional.
Well, I love this is another one of those things that to me feels like a student film and is kind of endearing to me is like Luqman Ali, when he wrote the script, was clearly like, okay, I want to open this in a very ominous way. And I want there to be this person of authority on the television who's telling a story or giving some kind of testimony that relates to the events that we're about to see. And then something shocking will happen in title drop. But instead, he has this guy who is like he wrote a book or something, or he's like hosting a TV show on like how you can improve your life. And he's been invited on as like an expert to talk about the cigarette butt killer for some reason. And they're like, well, why would the cigarette butt killer do these things? And he tells that old parable about the scorpion and the frog. And this is touted as like expert testimony. And it's like, this doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's missing those connections is what I mean. It's like it does have the issue which a lot of stuff did after like Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs were really big, where a lot of people were trying to homage those, especially young filmmakers, and they don't quite have all the pieces fitting together in a way that works. They're there and you can see what the moment's meant to be, but it's lacking some of that cohesion. I also wanted to speak in defense of the jumper thing, because I know that in the US a jumper is like a sports dress or something like that. In UK English, a jumper is a sweater. Like, I would be wearing a jumper right now. So it's defensible. Every like other review on Letterboxd is like, actually that's a hoodie, bro. But it's a sweater of some nature, so it works as a jumper.
Yeah. Zach has obnoxious Letterboxd users, the best impression of all time on this podcast.
It's a hoodie, bro. Top comment, 5 stars. Yeah, I just think a girl in the yellow jumper sounds better anyway.
It does.
A girl in the yellow hoodie sounds a lot more passive.
No.
A jumper's like, I'm jumping. That's what it sounds like to me. Like you're getting jumped.
I bet that's what an advertising executive said.
Yeah.
They said, cut the it's cleaner. Girl in the yellow jumper.
Yeah, girl. Yellow jumper girl.
Yellow jumper girl.
Oh my God.
We can put that on bus stops.
Yep.
Oh,
Have we said our fill about this one?
I think we've filled up adequately.
Okay.
It's free.
It's free.
That is a good one. I like the editing in this. I do like, there's some nice punchy moments that are fun. The bit where he gets out of the ground miraculously and has the gun, I laughed at that, but not because I was like, oh, how silly, but because I laughed kind of because I thought it was, I don't know, I was enjoying it so much. I was like, yeah, he shot her. Woo!
Or kicking down the door, which is
That was
even
great.
a door, which also just points to that. I was like, damn, this is like somebody's house. But yeah, that was like, I was like, what is happening right now?
That was great. And that you can tell that they either built a set or they there's another doorway that they hid, because they dolly back and forth from one side of the wall to the other. That was really neat. That was like some early De Palma stuff. I was so into it in that scene. And
Who is Jim Carrey?
Yeah.
Which I turned on the
Hollywood
subtitles
extraordinary.
for a little while because the sound mix was so muddy, and the subtitles on YouTube said Jim Curry instead of Carrey. So I was like, oh, are they thinking of Tim Curry? Until I cottoned onto it.
Oh man.
Yeah, that moment in the bathroom does have another kind of Tarantino reference though, because when the detective is standing over him with the gun and he's on the ground, it looks a lot like the scene from Reservoir Dogs where Harvey Keitel is standing with the gun and Tim Roth is on the ground. And yeah, neat stuff. The references are so obvious, but like, you know, it was fun. 3 out of 5. We can review. Who's talking first?
Mitchell's talking first.
Okay, Mitchell, what video game have you been playing?
About. I haven't been playing anything, Zach. I'm a student.
I victimized Mitchell.
I work. Hold on, let me think. Wait, I got it. The international trailer for Pressure just came out. The film Pressure film.
I feel like I've seen this. Who's in Pressure? What's going on?
It's Brendan Fraser as Eisenhower.
Yes,
it is.
Yes.
And what's it? And Damian Lewis from a lot of things, Band Brothers, and who plays
that one too.
General Montgomery. Yep. Which is interesting. I'm blanking on the main guy, the meteorologist guy's name. I'm sorry. I remembered my 2 favorite people.
Hot priest,
Andrew Scott? Yeah. Andrew Scott. Yeah.
Andrew Scott. Thank you. Yeah. Whoo! Anyway, it's being heralded as the ultimate dad film, which is kind of true. But this international trailer that came out is kind of a banger, and it gets me excited because they definitely threw a lot of budget in it, and it definitely reminds me a lot of The Longest Day, and it's the production behind all of the Churchill films like Darkest Hour.
Oh,
and I guess they're just like Calm Before the Storm is like their genre. They just want to keep going. Like things are building up is like what the kind of films they make. But yeah, I mean, it looks really exciting. I mean, it's mostly about the actual weather reporting and how important meteorology was. Arguably, like the most important moment in meteorology in the 20th century, because quite literally the day that it happened and the time that it happened was like basically luck. Like it was basically luck and guessing based off of the limited, weather balloons and sensors that they had in Ireland at the time to predict the weather, to essentially obfuscate their operation for D-Day, but also not be completely swept away by a hurricane. So that is really cool. And weather movies are boring and I hate them and they suck. But
Can you name another one?
Like, nope. There's that one where it's like the covers, like the Statue of Liberty is frozen.
Oh, The Day After Tomorrow?
There it is. Yep, The Day After Tomorrow.
My favorite weather movies, The Day After Tomorrow and the D-Day movie.
Anyway, Twister.
Oh, okay. All right.
There's another one.
Yeah.
All right.
Twister?
Sharknado. I'm surprised I even remembered that many. But anyway.
How about Moonfall? Does that count?
Did you see Moonfall?
I've never seen
Moonfall. Okay, all right. Geostorm.
But anyway, it looks...
Does anybody remember Geostorm?
Oh, I hated Geostorm. I remember that one.
That came out when we were in high school.
Yeah, I saw it on a coach bus and I hated it. Thank you. But anyway, it makes meteorology look really cool, and there's clearly a lot of effort put into like the buildup. And The Longest Day is the best depiction of D-Day, in my opinion. And The Longest Day really kind of like encapsulates like the scale of everything. And I feel like I got from this trailer, there's definitely a large scale. I will criticize the film if it does not cover Juno and Sword and the British Commonwealth, because it is an absolute sin that the British Commonwealth is not depicted in D-Day. But I mean, they got Montgomery in there, so I'm hopeful. But the trailer only showed Americans, so I guess we'll find out. But I'm pretty excited about it.
What are your thoughts on Brendan Fraser as Eisenhower? Because that's a casting that strikes me as not something I would have predicted. Brendan Fraser is a much more kind of solid, immovable man than I picture Eisenhower as.
Yeah, and Eisenhower wasn't really known as someone who was particularly like interesting or like grandiose in his talks.
Sure.
Like the way that he taught, like he doesn't have like a whole lot of charisma. He's a really good like not speech writer necessarily, because normally you have writers for that, but I just think he's really more known for his policies, and he had a very steadfast nature, particularly during his time as the Expeditionary Force General. And you can hear it in like the speeches and stuff. I can't recall a lot of videos that came out of it. I mean, there's a lot of pictures of him talking, but I don't think it's a very big bar to cross. I mean, most presidents generally have a certain gravitas to them that is very hard, or some type of characteristic that's really well known, especially in the 50s and 60s onward, with all of the video coming out at that time. But I'm pretty confident he'll pull it off. Okay. And what I saw from the trailer, I mean, they showed some pretty emotional moments, and I think he's a pretty good pick for that.
All right.
Same thing for Damian Lewis too. Montgomery was a very posh and determined Brit, and he was very much like assertive the way that Damian Lewis was portraying him. So I'm enjoying that as well.
When does it come out?
May 23rd or something in the US.
Oh, that's Memorial Day weekend. That makes sense.
In UK. Yeah.
Well, I thought I was going to be talking about a book on Weekend Review today. I have about 20 pages left of a mystery that I thought for sure I was going to finish today, but busy day at work, so not quite to the end of the Lake District mystery. So instead, I'll be talking about a film by Woody Allen, because a couple days ago I watched Zelig. This is a movie that is barely talked about amongst like non-Woody Allen fans. I feel like it's not really that well remembered. Even people who don't really know anything about Woody Allen have heard of Annie Hall. They've heard of Crimes and Misdemeanors. They've heard of Manhattan. These are kind of his big movies. Sleeper, people have seen like a couple frames from Sleeper. Nobody really talks about Zelig, and I think that's because it's against type for him. It's a mockumentary, which is not something he ever made again, to this extent at least, because the entire thing features narration and like Ken Burns effect on photographs, and sort of the conceit of the film is that Allen plays a man named Leonard Zelig, who during the 20s to the mid to late 30s, essentially he has this condition where he's so desperate to be loved and fit in with other people that he is a literal physical chameleon. So he'll be having a conversation with a bunch of overweight people, and he will literally become overweight to resemble them and fit in. He'll be having a conversation with a bunch of doctors, and he will start speaking as if he is a doctor and come to resemble a doctor and sort of his poise and the way he's dressed. And the film tackles, okay, who is this guy? How did this come to be? Mia Farrow plays a doctor who's trying to sort of cure him of this condition and get him to adapt an actual personality rather than just blending in with everybody else out of this desire to fit in and be part of the masses. At the end, with this being the mid-30s, there's also some light commentary on this desire to fit in with other people, potentially segueing into like fascism. When Zelig disappears and goes to Europe, and then he shows up in the back of like newsreel footage of Adolf Hitler. So it's interesting, it's compelling in a Woody Allen way. You're getting light amusement out of this. I chuckled quite a few times. Allen himself doesn't like do his shtick very much because most of it is a narrator saying, next, Zelig went here and he did this. And then this happened, and you see photographs and newsreel footage. And this was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects because over a decade before Forrest Gump, Allen edited himself into these newsreels and old footage, I think, a bit more seamlessly than they did in Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump, I think, was impressive for the time, but it's dated a little bit in its reliance on computer-generated or computer-assisted effects. I think they did try to do a little more than they were really capable of at the time with putting Tom Hanks in this footage. There's some kind of garish lip movements where they've made John Lennon say things he didn't actually say during Dick Cavett interviews, things like that. I think Zelig, though, it's pretty seamless. It's an impressive watch. It's only 79 minutes. I was entertained. It's not a top-ranking Woody Allen movie. Nothing's going to be Annie Hall. That's kind of the top of the heap. And if you don't like Annie Hall, then this is probably not a subgenre you're going to like that much. I happen to really enjoy his sort of like can put on at 10 p.m. on a weeknight romantic drama vibe. And so I like a lot of his movies. This is a very light 4, and it's more of kind of a novelty than anything else. But like I said, it's so brief that it's really no harm checking it out. You can put this on at 6, have it done before 8, and watch like an episode of a TV show if you want before you're done and dusted for the night. So yeah, Zelig, a muted recommendation for a certain crowd, I guess.
If you go to bed at like 10:30.
I try to go to bed at 10:30. I have to go to work at 6.
There was a time when I fought for Week in Review to be only about film and television.
There was.
I don't even remember that.
Christian's
really
about to talk about a banana or something like that.
But, I don't think it ever bothered me when Mitchell talked about video games. I think that was just a crusade against Zach talking about music, if I'm being completely honest.
That's true.
But I've learned that if you can't beat them, join them. So I think maybe for the first time, I'm going to talk about music in Week in Review. I just saw Project Hail Mary, which was fine. I think it's getting a little more love than it might deserve, but it was good. It was a really nice Two of Us, Beatles, needle drop in it. And on the drive home from the theater, I was like, I'm going to listen to the Beatles, man, which I'm a Beatle fanatic, like on the same tier as I am a Star Wars fanatic. And yet I don't I'm also, at least in recent years, I'm trying to branch out more in terms of music, so I don't find myself re-listening to stuff as much as I used to. So I was just listening to Let It Be and then trying to decide an album after that. And I was kind of just scrolling Beatles stuff. And I landed on Past Masters, which is the compilation of their singles, which I forget about all the time. But all this to say, so many of the Beatles' best songs are not on their albums, at least on the British releases and what are now sort of viewed as the canonical releases on Spotify or Apple Music or whatnot. And it's so easy to forget. I mean, things like I Want to Hold Your Hand, Paperback Writer, We Can Work It Out, Hey Jude, for goodness sake. The list goes on, but it's just a funny thing that I think even Beatle fans can overlook very easily. But I was listening to particularly We Can Work It Out, which was a song that I remember as a little kid when I first started listening to the Beatles. I had some sort of compilation CD that my dad shared with me, and We Can Work It Out was on there, and I always skipped it. I found it kind of disorienting and confusing and not really like satisfying or exciting the way I would find like a pop song on the radio back in the elementary school days. But now it strikes me as this absolute masterwork of songwriting where there's this tension between Paul's verses where he's kind of trying to make peace and John's more sort of aggressive, matter-of-fact, life is very short section, and Ringo's phenomenal timekeeping where there's to speak in layman's terms, it speeds up and slows back down seamlessly. It's just one of these songs where you're like, you need two really incredible writers and fantastic instrumentalists and singers for it to come together. But,
right now.
Yeah. The Beatles are awesome and timeless, and everybody should listen to the Beatles. And if you think the Beatles are bad, you're a dumb baby.
All right. We're winning a lot of new viewers this episode. I'm going to piggyback that real quick. Paul and Ringo both have new albums coming out this year. And Ringo is actually working with like producers again. Ringo hasn't had produced his own records since like 2000 before last year when he put out a country album, and he's not a good producer, and he's actually working with like a real producer again. And I hope that's promising that he will be releasing like okay music at least.
Mm-hmm. I haven't listened to that country album, but I know T-Bone Burnett produced that one, and he's very, very good. He did some the Elvis Costello album that has Brilliant Mistake. That was also produced by him. He's a great producer.
I listened to all of Elvis Costello, but a lot of it outside of like the Imperial phase kind of blends together.
That's fair, especially if you did it all in like one sitting or contiguous.
Well, it was like over a couple months. Not as long as it took to listen to all of Sinatra. My God, I was listening to that man for like half a year. Yeah, a lot of it's like that.
For hours.
Yeah, pretty much. I think I'm pulling a prompt this episode, so let me
pull it.
Oh my goodness me, my fuzzy tail and whiskers.
No, don't cut that.
I'm late. Oh, this is gonna be a tricky one, but I'm gonna go for it. Right. An LGBTQ plus centered film released before 1940.
Oh wow!
Man.
I know at least one of these exists.
They do exist.
There's a lesbian silent film from like the mid-20s.
I checked.
But
I can't believe Mitchell wrote this prompt. That's crazy.
This is gonna be a challenge, but I'm gonna go for it because I think this could be really, really intriguing. Even if it ends up being like a government produced PSA about those evil homosexuals. Get those limp-wristed sissy boys out of your town. That's un-American.
And the director was gay.
When you sashay away, you sashay with Hitler.
Dang, Zach, that was good. Your transatlantic accent is like perfect.
Well, okay, if you want to see whatever that ends up being, tune in next time. I'm pretty excited about this one.
The game of 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 the game.